Welcome, everyone. This is an interview with one of the people from the last Finders course, Patricia Diekman. Hello, how are you?
I'm great.
Good to see you. Let's start with the obvious question, which is, what were you like before the class? And what are you like now? You know, what changed for you? How did you experience the world before and after it? All of that kind of stuff that is, I'm sure, everybody's like very first question.
Well, before I took the course, I was pretty happy most of the time, but I could still get irritated with people sometimes, and things didn't go my way. And I definitely pretty much had an idea of how I thought everything should go. So that would be a source of some of my frustration. And with taking the course in time, I found a lot more acceptance of not only others, but of myself. And even happier. The times when things might disturb me, they're at a much lower level and don't hang around very long at all. Oh, it used to take me, embarrassedly, it used to take me about 2 or 3 days to get over something that really ticked me off. Some people never get over it, so that's not too bad. But now, there's so much less that does irritate me, and I can just let it go, like almost as soon as I notice something's bothering me.
Right on. Right on. Is it always an active process, or does it just let go of itself sometimes, or how does that show up?
Oh, yeah, a lot of times it doesn't even bother me. I'm just aware that, oh, that would have bothered me in the past. So I really like that, because I would try myself I would talk to myself, okay, you shouldn't let this bother you, blah, blah, blah. And I would do all this self-talk. And now almost all the time it's just automatic.
So would you say, as a function of that, there's been a big reduction in self-talk and all that self-referential thought, or whatever we want to call it?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Which is, is pretty consistent. There's a tiny percentage of people, maybe 5% of people, that it goes up for. But then they're not attached to any of it. It's just kind of there in the background. But yeah, that's very common. So what else do you notice? Do you still have a mix of positive and negative emotions?
Yes, on occasion I have negative emotions. If there's something pretty big going on, like a family crisis, I'm not immune to having an emotional reaction to it. But I have tools and things to help me through that. And I definitely have a huge desire to be free of it as soon as possible. Instead of wallowing in it or whatever, that I will take my time right away to do what I can to release that and go back to having equanimity and peace. That's my main desire in life.
And most likely your main experience, would you say?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is an amazing part of that fundamental shift. It's interesting, in location 2, this is kind of the mix, right? Especially in sort of the later half of location 2. And somebody who doesn't know what I'm talking about can go to nonsymbolic.org and go to the publications page and read one of the summary papers to find out what I mean by that. But it's just basically different types of ways that persistent non-symbolic experience shows up. So the second half of location 2, it's this incredibly very functional, very emotionally positive place. But there are still things that can get at you with very, very deep emotional triggers. Pretty much the thing that you hear from everyone when something does occasionally grab them is exactly what you just said, which is family stuff. The family stuff does fall away at other locations in the continuum, especially by location 4. But at this point, it's still there. So these changes are interesting. People will be watching sort of these different videos with different people from the course that are at different locations, and I think it's kind of fun in a way to sort of point out some of these differences.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think the benefits if you had to like rattle off to your best friend or something what the benefits of this have been for you, what would you say they are?
Well, definite increase in well-being, um, smoother relationships with others, and sometimes just an ability to see through somebody and so therefore not be disturbed by it. It's kind of a clarity of when you're in a relationship of what's going on, and so they're more of an acceptance of the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me more about relationships. How do you think that it's changed your relationships?
Well, I just experience a feeling of love most of the time. You know, can be in a group, and as each person speaks, it's like that's the only person there, and I'm just feeling all this positive regard for them and acceptance of what they're saying. It doesn't have to be the way I think and feel, so it's not like they're clones, but just this overall acceptance of each person. That's a really nice thing. And in personal relationships, that acceptance and non-judgment. That's a big part, non-judgment.
For sure. So it's interesting, right? Because it sounds, I think, to people sometimes like when you say that about others, that you just have this love for them, and a reduction in judgment and all of that. People say, oh, well, you must be, super easy to be manipulated in that state and things like that. What would you say about your ability to still discern what's best or what's best for you, or but to still have sort of discernment rather that goes along with love?
I definitely have discernment. Definitely have discernment, which is a wonderful thing because I can accept somebody, in that moment, but it won't be somebody that I choose to spend a lot of time with.
What was your background prior to the course, in terms of like a spiritual background or a religious background or anything that you maybe did for sort of personal development or spiritual development over the years?
Okay, my background. I grew up Catholic with a policeman for a father. So kind of strict rules that were put on me. And but then as an adult, I branched out and opened up into some other things that were much more life-giving and freeing. I've been a part of a non-intentional community years ago, and I've just been fortunate to be exposed to a lot of things that were opening and helping me expand and grow. And that's been for a long time because right now I'm kind of old in a way. But always been wanting to improve, always wanting to be able to love more and accept others and myself, which usually I know it starts with looking out there instead of inside, which is one of the things I wanted to add into before about other people bothering me or what something I was saying, that what it really is bringing it back to me. And as I learn to accept myself, it's so much easier to accept others. So instead of it being something out there, looking for the externals to give me peace, like if there wasn't a family problem or this person wasn't doing that, then I would be at peace. But the reality is it's got to start here with me.
So you'd say it's more situation independent, basically, at this point.
Yes. All of the exercises, all of the learning is all within me. Yeah. And then I've also been a Reiki person for several years. So, Course in Miracles, reading about non-dualism, but not experiencing it. And this has helped with that, bringing it from the head to the being, which Reiki has also done for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. How did this show up for you from a spiritual or religious standpoint, thinking about all of what you were just saying there? There's sort of a religious or spiritual thread that runs through a lot of those things. And, for some people this shows up in a sort of a more religious or spiritual sort of context, and there's more of a sense of the divine for some people. For other people, there's more of a sense of like, you have this sense that everything is conscious, or everything is consciousness, or there's an aliveness in things. There's just so many different ways that this experience can show up for people. I'm curious, how is that really shown up for you?
Well, at some point many years ago, I started to have a confusion, or something shifted in me, because my background was Christian and Jesus was a good friend, My dad wasn't such a good person for me to identify with, so that worked really good for a while to have a personal relationship. And then as time went on in my experiences and explorations, I had a long time, which to me was kind of like the dark night, because I just couldn't figure it out. I mean, to me, God was bigger than that, but it was so impersonal. And so I just kind of went along with what I was doing, but I had some confusion. And not that I don't completely have any, but what this has helped me more with is, and the thought that I had was that God is in everything, so that's the way I experience it, that everything that is that essence, whether it's divine essence or just the essence of life. I think that's a personal experience.
All right. What about, have you noticed any changes in, synchronicity, or synchronistic events, or flow in life, or anything like that?
Yes, but I can only think of one right now, but I know there's been more. Well, like one is that when I signed up for the course, one of the other members wasn't even on board yet, and I had already made some vacation plans. So this is like a year later, and it turns out that I'm passing through his town, which is very far away. And he wasn't always available because his job took him away some. And it just happened that the morning I was coming through his town, he was home, and so we could meet in person. So that was definitely synchronicity, because that had been on like for a year.
I think it's interesting. Everybody had, I think pretty much everybody had amazing synchronicity stories as we went through the course. And yet it's funny, right? When you sit, I'm the same way. Sitting here right now, I can't think of a synchronicity story, even though they fill my day, right? It's so funny how, in my case at least, they just kind of become normal, and they just have sort of slid into the background, and I don't even distinguish that, or distinguish that as kind of a separate way for things to flow. I wonder if you've had any sort of similar type of experience with that way of sort of being, or things showing up, or.
Yeah, they happen all the time.
It's amazing. I think that's very much a universal thing, which is why I asked about it with PNSE. Is that people who transition to PNSE do seem to experience more synchronicity, and they seem to experience it in different ways, which I think is pretty interesting. Well, let me ask you about the course a little bit. So what stands out in your mind as like key moments for you? Like, what were the most impactful moments, just out of curiosity, for you with the course, or even, I suppose, after the course or before the course or something, but in some way related to it?
Okay, here's a little one. That one of the exercises was envisioning people all being happy for me. And I had trouble with that because I just haven't experienced that a lot in life. Maybe they do, but I don't know it. So that was a little hard for me. But then at some point I went to meet some friends for lunch and came in late. And it was like they all about jumped out of their seats, like they were so happy to see me. And I thought, I mean, I see these people a lot, but I thought, oh, good, I can use that in that exercise. So, that was, and I brought that up to them last week, and they all remembered it too. So I don't know what was going on that day, but other things that are bigger to me were the experience of, with the group, sinking into the feeling of awareness with one another as the group. That was profound. and how easy it was being with each other just to go there. You'd go out and then you'd go back in. So that was really instrumental. Another one is when one of the people in the group was having a personal difficult time and they were troubled. And for me, when I like went into meditation or thought about him, whatever, I experienced such oneness, but without any emotional attachment. And I don't think I've ever had that happen to me before in life. You know, usually there's the emotion that comes in. And one of the problems that I've realized I've had in life is seeing love and pity, you know, instead of just love. Sometimes the pity would be the hook. And this was just acceptance. It was so free, and just that oneness without emotional attachment. I love that. I love that.
Awesome.
And then there was a third one. I just jotted something down. Oh, okay. One morning as I awakened, which is usually a pretty good time for me that something new's coming in to me. But as I awakened, before my eyes were open, I could just see everything being very fluid, like all of life, and that everything is one and everything is happening the way it's supposed to. So that was a different kind of experiential thing.
So all of these different experiences that were all sort of hints and clues and openings of things to come. And it's kind of amazing when you think about it, how many of those things happen in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Do you have a sense of when you sort of, I guess we could say, made the big transition? Of course, all throughout the course, people were getting happier and their measures all improved, and everybody was, you know, shedding their stress and anxiety and stuff like that. But that's still, all that stuff is great and amazing, but still very much fundamentally different from shifting into persistent non-symbolic experience. Do you have a sense of when you shifted in, and what type of thing or what the experience of that was?
I think the biggest one was when I had that loveness without the emotional attachment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that came after the course, like a week or two after the course or something, right? Am I thinking of that right?
I'm not sure if it was completely over.
Okay.
For me, I kind of think I've had like different experiences of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not one big boom.
Yeah, that was another interesting thing, is that for some people, there's of course a couple of different ways people shift into it, right? One is gradual and another is immediate. And in our research, most people were immediate. About 70% of people had an immediate shift. But some people had a much more gradual shift. Now, I shouldn't really say much more gradual. I mean like gradual over a couple of weeks or something like that. Maybe a few months or something, but not like gradual over like 10 years. So it's interesting because we even saw that in the course. You could say that you had sort of those little experiences, not little experiences, but profound experiences, but sort of put you on this transitional slope, and kind of faded you into it. Whereas some other people did have like just one crazy experience, and that was it. And there was like nothing before that.
I've had experiences. This is when I was with other like-minded people, and just such that feeling of oneness, and it's hard to describe. This, one of those indescribable kind of things. But I've had many. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So you'd had glimpses of it before, but it never really rooted itself in before.
Well, when this was during the course time.
Oh, during the course time. Okay.
Yes, when I would be at some other training, and there were other people that are on the path, and they would be phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually good timing taking that.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is actually a good point, I think, for people listening. They don't have to like give up the other stuff that they're doing necessarily. If there's, I think one of the things that we learn through the course is what is and isn't effective for you, and what is and isn't synergistically effective for you, so you're able to have that discrimination. You know? What do you think? I mean, is that your experience of it too?
Yes. Yes, and what I'm talking about was something that is definitely helpful, and it really builds, you know, it's the same type of thing for me.
Yeah.
So it just really helps expand the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I got you.
Much more than if I hadn't taken the course, I believe. I believe that.
Say that again.
That the experiences that I had at the other, with this was a Reiki, is so much more than it would have been if I hadn't taken this course. I mean,
Right,
this
that's synergistic effect.
yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because when we first started the course, we were thinking to ourselves, you know, there's these two key components. One is that people need to find a method that works, which is hard enough to do. There's tons of methods out there, but there's really not that many super effective ones, at least from what our research seems to suggest. And the second one is that they need to find the ones of those that match where they're at. And so, you know, the whole overall goal of the Finder's Course was originally just basically to help people train up on finding the things that are, you know, basically knowing what things are most effective, and then finding the ones among those things that are useful for them, and then getting a sense from that of what effectiveness really feels like, so that when they are exploring other techniques, they can tell if they're going, you know, if they're worth their time or not, if they're going in the right direction, not going in the right direction. As I'm sure I've said on other interviews, and certainly in my talks about this in the academic world and stuff, I mean, I was stunned, frankly, that people woke up during this course, because it was called the Finder's Course because it was designed to help you find the method that you might use for a period of time, you know, after it. Yet there just seems to be some sort of magic in the particular combination of all of these different things that I don't think anybody escaped. I think everybody basically made that transition. I mean, I know everybody basically made that transition to persistent non-symbolic experience. It's crazy.
And that the experience of being in awareness with one another. See, that's the same kind of thing that in the training that I do in Reiki is more about being the Reiki or being the love. You know, it's not all that. But so that experience of being in that oneness and in that awareness with other people in the group, that just opened it up even more when I was with a larger group, and that's what everybody was doing there too. So it's just like, you know, just spreading.
So one of the things that does happen, especially in location 1, location 2, is that there are periods of time where you do get stimulus that can sort of suppress that PNSE experience. It can kind of suppress that feeling of deep peace and imperturbability and things like that. Especially like some intense family thing or whatever else. So, you know, as you're talking about persistence, is that what you mean, or do you mean it some other way, or, you know, I think just clear it up a little bit for folks at home.
That way, that I lose some of the equanimity in the moment if it's something really big. Yeah, that it takes a little effort in stepping back and refocusing to be restored to that.
Mm-hmm. Is it? I mean, does that sense ever really completely go away?
No.
Right.
No. Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think that's such a fascinating thing about how it shows up in different ways in the different locations. And one of the things that I've noticed at location 2 is that for those things, that stepping back process and whatever it is that people find that actually work for them to allow it to sort of bubble back up, if you will, more to the fore, that becomes increasingly habituated over time. And so even though it's only very occasionally punctuating the experience to begin with, as that habituation kicks in, sort of the more it happens, the more the habituation process kicks in, and the more the habituation process kicks in, eventually even those things, they lose their stimulus power, if you will. They lose their ability to grab you in even the little ways that they're grabbing you.
Good. Yeah, one of the things I did one day, and to me this is all about the oneness and seeing it all in nature and everything, was I was just experiencing some emptiness. And so I went to the conservatory where all the flowers were, because I just wanted to feel the flowers. I wouldn't do that in the past. I wouldn't even think that way, but it was so comforting and so soothing. Or to sit out on my deck and see the branches moving. It just was, it was that oneness which helped restore me back to that equanimity.
Yeah, I hear you. It's interesting, isn't it, also how things like that oneness can start off being so incredibly pronounced, but then really kind of move to a background new normal over time. And yet they can still be focused on and brought back to the foreground like we can do with anything. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, what has been your experience of that settling in process? What's been your experience of that as it's settled in and sort of become a new normal?
I want to say it's kind of like humility, where like everybody is the same, regardless of anything. And so it's just a peacefulness and acceptance, and connection with strangers. I mean, a lot more eye contact, and I don't know, just being present to other people wherever I am. And they're receptive, which is nice. It's just kind of, it's like this magnetic thing.
Did you have any shift in life goals, or did you have sort of overall life goals and stuff going into this? And if you did they remain the same, or did they shift? Or any thoughts on goals?
Well, my goal now is just to be, but that's a pretty big goal. Actually, for me, that really is a shift, that it's okay just to be. I've come from running a social service agency, different things that I've done is like being a helper type of person. And so the shift that I can just be, and that's good enough. That's it. Just being and being love. That's really my goal.
That's cool. Is it a goal or a reality? Is there any way for you to not be?
Yeah, it's a reality. It is a reality. Yeah. But which is a freedom, because especially after having retired, I felt like, I should do this, I could do this, I could teach this, all those things that I could do. And this is so far more important. If I was younger and still working, I would still work. But I'm just at a point in life where I can be. I'm so involved with lots of people, and will be wherever I am.
That actually brings up a good question. I've noticed as I've been talking about the results from the research that most people seem to be scared of sort of making a transition into a persistent non-symbolic experience and losing their fear and losing their their dissatisfaction, losing their discomfort with the way things are, sort of all of those things that go away or that transition as a function of it. They really feel like all of those things contribute to their motivation. They contribute to them doing stuff in their life, and they think to themselves, am I just gonna Am I just going to sit on a couch and, watch TV for the rest of my life? Or, what's this going to be like on the other side of this? I mean, it's a genuine, huge fear, that ironically, it's a fear about losing your fear. But it's a genuine, huge fear that people seem to have. What do you think about it?
I think that fear is a real block. I mean, I had fear before I started this too, like, what am I exactly doing? But I also felt trust and just let that fear go. But the negative motivators, it's so much more free to have those melt away and the motivators be of love and acceptance. It's so much more powerful. And I don't think that they'll be lost for anybody. I think it will be a vast improvement in desiring to give to the world and give to others something far better than anything laced with fear or negative thoughts.
Along those lines, another thing that I've been hearing is comments like, well, I'm already happy. I've worked really hard to get to the point, maybe even where I'm happy. So, what would be so great about that? Going in, you scored, fairly high on happiness and well-being and everything else. I mean, I think you would have definitely been considered a happy person coming into the course. So, you're in a unique position in a way to offer some perspective on what the difference is there between, the happiness that you experienced before and how you experience things now. What would you say about that?
There's a difference between happiness and deep joy and peace. Happy's good, but deep joy and peace surpasses that. You're happy too.
Another thing that I hear is people talking about how, I've worked really, really hard to be this person. And, I spent all of these years developing all of these different aspects of myself. And I think when people hear the way I talk about it in the academic world, especially, and write about it from an academic perspective, and I talk about that shift from narrative self, the blah, blah, blah in your head self, the highly individualized sense of self to something else, people naturally have this fear that, oh my God, I'm going to just be totally different. Nobody's going to recognize me, and I've worked really hard on that, on who I am, and all that's just going to go away. What do you say to people about that sort of fear?
I don't know that people have noticed a whole lot different about me. Maybe a little, but now my husband said that I'm a lot calmer and not affected by worldly things. I said, what's that mean? But he said of whatever's going on in the world or what's ever going on outside, that I'm just more at peace with that and calmer. Well, I know that my grandkids have even said things though. And my daughter's dogs are different around me. Which really, it sounds so silly, but it's a big thing. Because I haven't been a dog lover. And it's like, oh my God, they can't get enough of me. Or like I was at another meeting and I noticed that after the meeting, these people just came over and they were just standing by me. I'm like, so something people are picking up on too that maybe isn't being articulated.
How about internally? I mean, how does that feel internally? That shift. I mean, is there a sense that, oh my gosh, I spent all this time creating me sort of over all of those years, and boy, that was just all a waste of time. Now that's all totally gone. And I mean, how is that internal experience? Good as well.
That I had recently with some women that I get together. We've gotten together for like 2 years, and I just had this thought afterwards about what persona they each had, and I knew what mine was, but then I thought, but that's who I am now. It was like the persona that I was trying to put out there, wanting to put out there, that it is me now. So that's cool. It's come together. And one of the other things that I had thought recently was that I believe, people are afraid, we are all afraid to look at ourselves because we're afraid that we're going to find we're not so good, or, you know, the things that we've done that we think were wrong or whatever. And the truth of it is as we do allow that to fall away, we find out what a beautiful person we really are, that the true self, you know, there's nothing to complain about. It's all good.
So
And to be able to see that in other people, to be able to see that, you know, in other people is just wonderful.
you use the word true self. Is that what it really feels like?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
If you were to try to describe to somebody what that true self feels like, what would you say to them?
Unencumbered, free, peaceful, accepting, confident in others and things unfolding, you know, whatever we're experiencing as it is. Acceptance, openness, like completely open. No front, no back, it's just all open. Yeah, vulnerable without need for protection. I don't even know if vulnerable is the right word, but no need for protection.
And do you still have the same, you know, favorite foods, and you know, what about sort of the other normal human stuff?
I'd say yeah. I'm a difficult one because I had the oral surgery, so food was a little bit. I think I finally had enough of shakes. But I still like the same foods. I still like pretty much, yeah, everything. Those things are all the same. And my interests and beliefs, I think, are all still the same.
Isn't that amazing in a way, and that like so much else can change in terms of perspective and the way the world's experienced, and yet so many things remain the same.
Yeah.
And from the outside, if you think about the fact that people can't even tell, right? You still seem like the same old Patricia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, slight differences, you know, in the positive direction that people appreciate and all that. But I mean, it's not like, you know, it's not like there's some totally massive change where people don't recognize you, or where even I would say that you don't even recognize your own, you know, way that you've been up to this point.
And I think they're more accepting of me. I mean, I find that I share myself more deeply because I'm not afraid to. And because in the past I'd be kind of afraid of people thinking I was weird or judging me or whatever. And that's not my experience at all. Not my experience at all. So, and that's another new freedom, to just be able to be who I am, express it, and, you know, see people enjoy it.
Have there been any downsides? Can you think of any downsides that you're like, oh man, that's, you know, all this stuff is great, but let me tell you about this?
My only downside would sometimes be confusion, because that's my mind. You know, like, that's just my own thing. But sometimes I'd feel a little confused because some of my old beliefs, you know, were being exposed to some other way of looking at things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common thing for people to phase through.
I'd go back and I've looked at some things that maybe 8 years ago I read. It's like, I understand it way better than I did when I read it then. So, you know, it's the things that have been indoctrinated in me because of my background, you know, that were out of very early life. And so to open the mind and be, I mean, I've opened it before, but this was opening it further, to some of those core things that I was taught to be able to open and see things, experience things differently. I'm very grateful for it. But, sometimes be like,
Yeah, things do occasionally bubble up in a moment like that, absolutely.
Right, and then I could choose to be open to it and experience it.
And then there's the transformation that happens in that belief system or whatever it is. Yeah. And so I think one of the cool things is that as more people are able to have sort of these more honest and open conversations about what this is and isn't and whatnot, that it's going to be really helpful to even just know things like that. I mean, that kind of sharing of experience from a PNSE perspective isn't something that you see out there. When you read books on different people's beliefs around this, or different people's, different religious views or spiritual views of it, or atheist or agnostic views of it, or whatever. Rarely, if ever, very, very rarely, if ever, do they ever include things like this that just come up as a function of it. I think it's going to be so cool, sort of having, it's such a neat thing having a community of people where all of the stuff that can come up sort of post this major transition or post this major shift, it can be talked about openly, and it's just like the rest of human nature, right? You discover that you're definitely not the only person that's experienced that, right? And everybody's like, oh yeah, sure, that's such and such, and here's what helped me through it. And well, thank you very much for taking the time for this interview and for, I would say, being brave, but of course there's such a tremendous shift in fear and whatnot. But nonetheless, being brave and really putting it all out there so that other people can really be helped by it.
All righty.
That's great. All right, thank you. I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Have an awesome day over there.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.